In this video, you're going to be finding out all of the Broken Bloodlines in the game and just how good they are, because I'm going to be taking every single Broken Bloodline in Shindo Life and ranking them from 1 to 10. Now, these are not going to be in order from 1 to 10. They're going to be ranked out of 10. Maybe some Bloodlines would get a 5. Probably not a 5 because it's a Broken Bloodline list. But, you guys got to get the point by now. I did one of these before. You guys really liked it. I think it's just kind of a good departure from the worst to best series. Just kind of like an evolution, if you will. But I do think both of them have their own, uses. So if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to like, subscribe to the video, guys. All right, so we start off with Ryuji Kenichi, one of the, the longest lasting Broken Bloodlines in this game. Now, the reason why is going to be for the low HP mode. It's also going to be coming in at a 7.5. Now, you guys may be thinking that seems pretty low for Ryuji Kenichi. Well, Ryuji Kenichi really hasn't gotten that much love recently. I mean, kind of the only thing it has going for it is the low HP mode. And if you guys, if you guys really like the low HP mode, then that's good for you. I actually do think the moves themselves are quite good, but you do have to use them correctly, and sometimes it can be pretty difficult to use them. But yeah, the low HP mode still does carry this bloodline quite a bit. It is very mode carried. The low HP mode is kind of the thing that everyone, it's what everyone kind of uses about this Broken Bloodline. And I will say this, the people that say low HP mode is not broken, probably, they're kind of just copamine, you know what I mean? Like, they're trying to cope for the fact that they're using something that's, like, pretty dumb broken. Or they just haven't really fought someone that's ever been, actually, pretty good with using this mode. Because I'll say this, if someone really knows how to use the low HP mode correctly, if someone is actually really good at this game, you will almost never beat them. Because the secondary life, you get a huge stat boost, you get a ton of abilities. Like, the mode is basically the bloodline itself, and it kind of does carry the bloodline. So that's kind of the reason why that it's going to get only a 7.5 and not, higher, because the moves themselves, they're not the worst thing in the world, but they're definitely not as good as the mode itself. Now, coming up next is going to be Shindai Rengoku, coming in a solid 8. Now, the reason why it's going to be an 8 is because they actually did fix the infinite flight. You can no longer infinitely fly with Shindai Ren. It was fixed, thankfully, because people were being very annoying with that, but it still does have the massive M1s that hit people from across the map. And if you guys can literally just do this and then right mouse button, and then you guys can immediately start M1ing again. So you still can be in the air infinitely, but you have to be a little bit more smart with it than just infinitely flying. Also, the reason why it's going to be an 8 and not, the same as a 7.5 like the one before is mostly, honestly, because the moves themselves are also quite good. Now, if anything, Shindai Ren would be getting an 8.5, but I do feel like because the infinite flight was removed, it's not as good as it was before, and before it was an 8.5. Also, it does actually have the counter here. The counter still does lots of damage. It's almost impossible to hit, and I would recommend going for an instantaneous counter. Oh, he's dead. Rip. I would recommend going for an instantaneous counter, but if you do not, if you want to use just a high damage counter, Shindai Ren's where it's at, man. So yeah, I think a solid 8th place is very solid for this bloodline. Not 8th place, number 8. Now, next up is going to be Ryuji Kenichi, and it's going to be a 7.5. Now, the 7.5 is mostly because they did fix the move stacking. You can no longer move stack with the C-spec, which, it's still a really good thing that it's fixed, but you still can move stack with it, but it's not insane move stacking. It's just kind of like combo setting, I would say. But Ryuji Kenichi mode is like the stats seem really low, in all honesty. Like, the stats are quite low for the mode, but it does obviously have the super high damage M1s that don't knock back. Really, really good, obviously. But the main thing that Ryuji Kenichi actually shines with is actually the third ability. Third ability is a really good combo extender. You obviously do have the first ability. I would recommend not using it, but it, like Ryuji Kenichi, I'll say it could be worse. It's definitely a really, really good bloodline, but it doesn't really stack up against the other, really broken bloodlines. But obviously it's really good for combo extending. Combos are really meta right now, but burst combos are meta. That's why it's not really that high. But I do feel like just because, it has high damage, really good combo extend potential, it still is a broken bloodline. I do see it all the time, but it's going to be a 7.5. If you made it this far in the video and haven't hit that like button yet, feel free to do it now. If you already hit that like button, you are cool. Now, coming up next is going to be Strange. Now, before, it's going to be a 9, by the way, which is almost a 10. I'm almost never going to give a bloodline a 10 unless it is the most broken thing to ever drop in the game. But yeah, Strange, for some reason, you can actually C-spec 3 times. I don't know why. That's still in the game. That's been in the game since Strange has released. You can do it 3 times. That's it's not very fair, but it does obviously have the buffed M1s, no knockback, still really good. I love using the third ability myself, but the third ability can actually get in you a lot of trouble if they're using a counter, because it is very predictable. The second ability is pretty trash. I would recommend not using it, but it still can be, useful sometimes. And then obviously, boom, first ability, super long lasting stun. Don't really need to say much about the stun. You guys have probably fought it by now. It's literally the longest stun of the game. And then weapon spec is an iframe that also does a lot of damage to people. Like, Strange has like Strange is insane. Strange is legitimately insane. I mean, it has a insanely high damage block break. Has the ability to do 3 C-specs at the same time, you know? It has a stamina drain, high damage ability. It has such a long range. Like, you could snipe people. If you have good enough aim, you could snipe people with that third ability. It is a really, 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 really good bloodline. I mean, there's not really much else to say other than that. It's a really good bloodline. It's kind of, you know, the most meta bloodline in the game right now, other than like another 1 or 2. And yeah, Strange. Thankfully, it's limited, so not every single person and their mom is using this in the game. Am I right? Now, coming up next is going to be Vengeance. Now, it is going to be one of the lowest ranked on this list at a 7, but it still is a really good bloodline in my opinion. I know there are some Vengeance haters, but I do actually really like using Vengeance. I think it's a really fun bloodline to use. It's really easy to combo extend with it as well. I'll say this, the mode, it really isn't that good, just because, you know, the stats are terrible. The actual abilities are, you know, not that great, but I do actually think the Vengeance first ability is good enough to actually land it on this list. It's an iframe ability, it dashes, that's quite good. The second ability, it's a pull ability. It's good for people that can't aim, I guess. And yeah, there's not really much else to say about it. I mean, like, Vengeance really just, it's there. It's a taijutsu based bloodline. Ever since Pyromania was introduced, Vengeance definitely hasn't been that meta anymore, just because Pyromania does everything Vengeance does, but better. But, you know, solid 7 for this. Now, coming up next is gonna be Raion Gaiden with a solid 8. Now, you guys may be thinking 8, that seems, you know, kind of low for being one of the most meta bloodlines of the game, but I'm just gonna be honest with you by saying this. Raion Gaiden, it's really fun to use. It is by far one of the most fun bloodlines of the game to use, and I'll say that with 100% guarantee that if you guys get Raion Gaiden, you will have a blast. It's fun. In the you know, PvP right now, it's really not that fun, but Raion Gaiden is kind of a, you know, a light spot, because who doesn't like putting giant meteors of people into the sky and flinging them towards you, you know what I mean? But Raion Gaiden itself, you know, the second ability, it's really good unless they're using body replacement. If they're using body replacement, it makes it useless, but if they're not, it is really good. The third ability, it can be countered by iframe counters, but if they're not using an iframe counter or you bait it out before using this ability, there's nothing they can do. I mean, they can do things that make it so they, you know, it doesn't really it kind of cancels it, but you still don't get comboed at all. So it's kind of just like a use it if you want. Like, it's kind of uncancelable. And then the first ability is garbage. The first ability has so much end lag, I would not use it. I don't know why it hasn't been fixed yet, but it does not, it has too much end lag to be useful. Also, the throwable of Raion Gaiden does tons of damage, just like insane amounts of damage. So yeah, Raion Gaiden, you know, I feel like 8 is solid. You guys see the flaws, you guys see the benefits, and there's not really much to say about it. Now, coming up next is going to be 6 Path Narumaki, coming in at a 9. So the reason why it's going to be a 9 is because I do think 6 Path Narumaki, some of the abilities really aren't that great, but the second mode and the third ability do really carry the bloodline. If you guys don't know what the second mode is, boom, Narumaki Awakened Form 2. You get giant rods coming out your butthole, and then they do lots of damage. It is like, it's a pretty, like, I cannot put it into words how good this mode is. You know, it does have its flaws, like super predictable, and the stats are absolutely insane. So you can use this mode just for the stats alone, because it doesn't even drain that much. It's 30 a second, really not that much. And then the third ability is completely uncounterable. It's just free damage unless, you know, somehow avoid it, and even then you could use it to extend combos and stuff. Like, you guys know how good 6 Path Narumaki is. You guys know why it's a 9, and it's just like, I really hope this doesn't get nerfed, in all honesty. I think the only thing that kind of like somewhat needs a nerf is the third ability, and even then I'm not gonna lobby for it at all, because it's good to have just a really broken bloodline in the game, because it kind of just gives something for people to work towards. But if there were an ability that got nerfed, it would be the third ability. Now, coming up next is gonna be Light Jokei at an 8.5. Now, the reason why it's going to be an 8.5 is because they actually did buff the mode recently. No knockback M1s that drain a ton of chi. That's the reason why, but other than that, you know, C-Spec is really good for combo extending. I would say the first and third ability are trash, never use them. That's why it's going to be an 8.5 and not like a 9 or anything. But the mode is insanely good. I mean, you know, non-knockback chi draining M1s is quite good, especially when it drains like a ton of chi from them. And it has probably like the third best counter in the entire game, because you can actually combo extend with it with 0 downside. So, you know, there's that. If you guys, you know, like using this sort of thing, go for it. And yeah, solid 8.5. Now, coming up next would be Borumaki. I'm not gonna, you know, stick on this that long. I'm not gonna talk about it that much. The third third mode is really good. I obviously don't have it, so I can't show you it, but the third mode is quite good. And then the second ability is a counter that you can choose when it actually works. I think the best thing of describing it is by using a counter. The other abilities of Borumaki, they're either super delayed, so they get countered super easily, or they're just, you know, not that great. But third mode and second ability are quite good for Borumaki. That's why it's going to be on this list at a 7. Now, coming up next is going to be something surprising, a Shindai Akuma at an 8. So Shindai Akuma is going to be an 8 simply because Shindai Akuma, you know, I'm going to say it. I'm glad the counter is as good as it used to be. It does trigger when people hit you, stuff like that. The weapon spec of the mode is a giant iframe mode drain ability, and then the second ability is super high DPS. You probably won't hit it unless they're stunned, but it is high damage. Third ability is actually a place lock. It's basically Bankai stun, but it doesn't really last as long, so you know, there's that. And then obviously the C spec is just, it's a clone summoning ability. I mean, I'm not really gonna talk that much about Shindai Akuma. You guys really kind of honestly know why it's good by now if you guys are watching this video. You probably PvP somewhat. You guys have probably fought this by now, and you guys are probably know why it's an 8. By the way, guys, what is just your favorite Broken Bloodline? What is just the bloodline that you always use if someone says you want to PvP? Like, if you're like 1-on-1v1, you always equip this. What bloodline is that? Now, in last is going to be the 10 out of 10 bloodline, Mud. I mean, like, look how godly this bloodline is. Look how much damage I'm doing. Look at the massive amount of damage I'm doing. It barely drains any chi. I'm totally not charging my chi. It's just such a godlike bloodline that it brings a tear to my eye how beautifully amazing this bloodline is. It's such a god tier bloodline. Anyways, guys, it's actually going to be it for this video. You guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like, sports. Hopefully see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.